Welcome to Aspects of Writing. I'm your host, James Kelly. My guests for today's show are Vicki-Ann Bush, Linda Stiles-Fox, and Becky Robinson. The topic of today's show is marketing ideas for the local author. But before we get to my guests, my panel and I would like to read a few fun quips and quotes. And Vicki-Ann, I'm going to let you start.
The dubious privilege of a freelance writer is you're given the freedom to starve anywhere.
All right. And Linda?
Learn to write. Never mind the damn statistics. If you like statistics, become a CPA. And that was by Jim Murray.
And Becky?
Asking a working writer what he thinks about critics is like asking a lamppost how it feels about dogs. Christopher Hansen.
All right. And mine is Dr. Samuel Johnson once said to an aspiring writer, "Your manuscript is both good and original, but the part that is good is not original, and the part that is original is not good."
That's not a good thing.
If you're just tuning in, you're listening to Aspects of Writing. I'm your host, James Kelly, and my guests for today's show are Vicki-Ann Bush, Linda Stiles-Fox, and Becky Robinson. The topic of today's show is marketing ideas for the local author. And our first guest is Vicki-Ann Bush, and she is a friend of the show. She's also one of our panelists. Today, however, we will consider her a guest. Vicki-Ann, please tell us a little bit about who you are and what your latest project is.
Like James said, I am, well, you didn't say it, did you?
No.
Well, darn. I'm an author of young adult fiction. I write primarily paranormal romance. I do have a little sci-fi sprinkled in there and one historical romance, but primarily paranormal. My latest project, which I just signed a contract for a couple weeks ago,
Yes.
is called The Academy of Souls. And the idea is kind of like, you know, the Green Mile, how they're the tiny little books. So the idea is to do a series of tiny short stories. And the premise is a high school where all the children are ghosts.
Okay.
And then one breather, which is what they call a living person, comes to the school.
Now, is this the one that's going to be published through the publishing company you spoke to me about?
This is my current publisher.
Oh, your current publisher.
Solstice Publishing.
Oh,
yes.
okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, the one thing that's different with your books is yours are published through publishers.
Right.
Whereas I think, Linda, you've self-published
I
through
am.
yours? Yeah.
Yep.
And that's what I like. I like to mix it up because it makes it interesting. All right, our next guest is Linda Stiles-Fox, and Linda was born in Worcester, Massachusetts, and raised in Peoria, Illinois, which, by the way, is where my grandmother is from. Linda relocated to the West Coast at the age of 19. Linda is the mother of 5 children, has 14 grandchildren, and 5 great-grandchildren. She's retired, and she's an empty nester. Linda now spends her time enjoying writing and publishing. She currently lives in Las Vegas, Nevada, with her husband, a dog, 2 cats, and numerous fish. She loves the water and spends many weekends as much as possible enjoying the waves. She has been in treatment for carcinoid cancer for the past year and a half and promotes awareness of the rare disease, which I did look up today, and I didn't realize how rare it kind of is.
Thank you.
Her motto is to live by is every decision has a consequence. Her current work, Forever Begins, will be the sequel to Forever Again, which has just received 5 stars in a review from readers' favorites. Forever Again, A Cabin in the Woods, and Santa's Little Secret are now in hard copy and available for purchase through Amazon and CreateSpace, and our current website, lindastylesfox.com. Linda, what else can you tell us about yourself and your work?
Well, first of all, I want to thank you for looking up carcinoid cancer.
Oh, you're welcome.
When you tell people that, they look at you and go, huh.
Yeah, like, what is
know.
that?
So thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That
So,
means a
I'm
lot.
a little familiar.
I guess the only thing that I would be, for the basis of my self-publishing, I really have written all my life.
Okay.
But about 30 years ago or so, I went through the cycle of the queries and the submissions and the rejections and it just got timely and costly.
Yes.
And I gave up. I said, I can't do this. But about 5 years ago, all of a sudden, someone told me about CreateSpace. And I looked into it and I thought, I can do this. Mm-hmm. And I did.
That's good. And I'm sure it's been an experience. Becky, how long and you have a book too, and we're going to talk about you in a minute, but when you did your book, did you self-publish or you went through a traditional publisher?
Oh, I feel a little bit embarrassed because I don't really consider it like a real book. I was mainly
It is a book.
I was publishing ebooks to help our clients, and I decided to put it up on Kindle just as part of that process. I have aspirations someday of writing, a full book, but it's really
You are a writer that is a book. Well, one of the things that's interesting about today as opposed to years ago, I always talk about how I started in 1995 when we didn't have the internet. We didn't have all the tools that we can go out there and publish with today. So it was arduous in the sense that I had to find someone who could publish the book. They were miles away. You didn't know anything about them. You couldn't research them. Today, you can just go to, like you said, to CreateSpace, Smashwords, and numerous others and just put it online.
It's completely different.
Yeah. Well, our third guest is Becky Robinson, and Becky is a wife and mother of 3 daughters, and she enjoys running, reading, writing, and a good cup of coffee and dark chocolate.
My kind of
girl. Oh, yeah, my kind of girl. Yeah.
She is the founder and CEO of Weaving Influence, and we'll talk about that in a minute, Becky. Becky's goal is to help people build their online presence and influence while making social media involvement accessible and doable for time-starved professionals, business owners, and authors. Weaving Influence offers consulting, coaching, training, implementation, content creation, and speaking services. Becky is the author and creator of 12-Minute Media Playbook Training Series, a series of ebooks designed to help people build their online influences through social media, 12 minutes at a time, as well as 31 Days of Twitter Tips, Grow Your Twitter Influence, 12 minutes at a time. And Vicki, I'll let you take over from there.
Yeah, okay. An author and prolific blogger, Becky's work has been published in Chicago Parent Magazine, The Insider, a print newsletter of the Kevin Eikenberry Group, the State Journal, and American Jail Magazine. She also published 3 white papers through Mountain State University. Becky contributes to several other blogs, including the Lead Change Group blog, the Bud to Boss community blog, and a Hopeful Sign. Becky previously wrote and managed Mountain State University Leader Talk and contributed to Women of HR. Is HR Hometown Reads, or what is HR?
No, Women of HR was a blog, and I don't even know if it's going anymore. This is an old bio, James. I don't know who sent you this bio.
I do my research, Becky.
I guess so. This is a really old bio. Most of the stuff that you shared, I don't really
Okay, so disregard
anymore,
everything we said about Becky.
Exactly.
We'll let her do it herself.
Women of Human Resources. So that was a blog that may or may not be still going, where a lot of women were writing about human resources topics.
Okay.
I'm interested
when we do Hometown Reads, we actually put a T in it, even though hometown is one word, just to differentiate from HR. People think of HR as human resources. So at least in my company, we call Hometown Reads HTR.
Oh, okay, cool.
Well, I have to confess, that's where my brain went first, was
Hometown Reads.
No, HR.
Oh, did it go to?
It did.
Yeah, mine did too, though.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, the real reason Becky's on the show is to talk about Hometown Reads and local authors. Please tell us a little bit about Hometown Reads, Becky.
Sure, I would love to. So I got the idea for Hometown Reads actually several years ago, back in 2012, when I first founded my first company. And the idea popped into my head one day when I was driving, and it kind of stemmed from the fact that I see in authors this deep desire to have their work be read. If you're going to invest time writing, and as you were sharing, Linda, about your dreams of writing 30 years ago, you write because you have a story that you want to share with someone. It's deeply meaningful to you. As a marketer, I saw the limitations that most authors have in marketing their books. Many authors, if they're just getting started or if they're self-publishing, they don't have a big budget for a publicist, but yet their work matters and they want to share it. And so I had this idea that if people could effectively leverage marketing to their own local communities, and that people in the communities could discover their work, then through online channels, those local fans could help those authors reach readers around the world. So the slogan on Hometown Reads is "From Your Hometown to the World." And what I find is that, every hometown has unique differences. So my local area is the Toledo, Ohio area. And there are things here, that there aren't anywhere else. We have Tony Pacos. It's famous. That guy, Jamie Barr, I think his name is, from MASH, made Tony Pacos famous. There are certain things that are famous in Toledo. Just like you all in Vegas, there, of course, like so many famous things about Vegas,
absolutely.
right? But beyond, landmarks or special restaurants, what makes a place unique are the people who live there.
Yes.
And so I feel that authors in each location are a part of what can make each hometown unique, but yet many authors are hidden or unknown or undiscovered in their locations. So we founded Hometown Reads in the hopes of showcasing and spotlighting authors so that their work can be seen and read and enjoyed.
And that's what we're going to talk about today, too, because it's so important what your website does is that it does highlight. If you want to know something about who the authors are in Las Vegas, you just click on Las Vegas, and it tells you those that have listed with you. And that's what I want to ask you, too. How does someone become a part of Hometown Reads?
Well, it's really easy, James. So you can go to hometownreads.com and click on join, and it's absolutely free for authors to join and list their books. We have now over 3,000 authors who have chosen to list their books at Hometown Reads. And at the current time, authors can put up to 7 books on the site. We are now live in 84 locations. But for all those places that we haven't yet landed, if you're an author in one of those locations, you can send us a note and let us know, hey, you're not yet in my town. I don't think we're yet in Peoria, Illinois, for example.
Probably not.
if you're an author in Peoria, Illinois, and you're listening, the only requirement that we have is that we try to get to at least 10 authors in any location who have listed their books before we make that hometown live on our homepage. Now, our homepage with 84 locations has gotten a little bit crowded. So at the current time, we are looking at how we can redesign the site to make it easier for people to find the books that they want to find. But at the current time, if you land on our homepage, you can scroll through those 84 locations. Mm-hmm. And every week we're adding more.
That's amazing.
That's great.
That's amazing. I remember when it was much smaller.
Yeah. Oh, I remember when too. Our first location was March of 2016, and that was Toledo, Ohio. I started right here in my own hometown. And at the end of 2016, we had 40 locations. Now we're coming to the end of 2017, and my team and I are making this sprint because we'd like to be in 100 locations by the end of the year. As we were talking, though, before the show went live, the number of hometowns are potentially endless in the United States.
Right.
There are small towns everywhere. Yeah. Writers like the two of you whose work matters.
Yeah.
Thank you for saying that. It's funny when we go out there and we do a signing, and James knows this, and people will be like, "You're local? You're local?" Yeah. We're like, yeah, we're local. Oh, like we're somehow an anomaly for that day that we happen to be there.
And then, of course, they immediately just know that we're stars. And so they have to have pictures taken and which, is kind of humbling for us.
Yes.
But it's just sad that especially our city is just so huge, and there are so many authors here.
Yes.
And our city doesn't know that.
Yeah, and what's interesting is, too, if you go to a Barnes & Noble's for a book signing for, say, either one of your books, people don't know that you're from here. Because usually Barnes & Noble's rotates their authors, and they come in from all over the United States and sometimes world to do their signings.
That's why we started with the coffee house tours.
Yes.
Because those will say on the posters or whatever when they're on the window that we're local.
Yeah. So, and we will go into that in a minute. Go ahead, Becky.
Well, and I think for people who love to read, the idea of local authors is so magical. I don't know about the two of you, but when I was growing up and I would read an author, I was kind of a nerd, I'll admit it. And what I would have dreamed was a chance to sit down across a cup of coffee and ask the author about the characters or, what were you thinking of when you included that line, and whatever happened to, in your imagination, what happens after the book? Like, how magical would it be to actually speak to the person who wrote the book that you love? And that when we read local authors' books, that's what we can do.
Yes.
Well, I'm an author and I'm still there. I'd love to be able to sit down with my favorite author and do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Me too. Because if Dean Koontz ever comes to Las Vegas, I'm going to get arrested.
Well, we'll see.
I am, because I'm going to hunt the man down.
Becky, I have a question for you about this. When it comes to Hometown Reads and you list the author, do you list their homepage as well, like Vicki-Ann's website or Linda's website? Because that would be a great place for them to go and see where they're going to be next in the city.
Sure. We have talked about adding that event functionality to the website. We're not quite there yet, but with this new homepage and information redesign, we're thinking about how to include that and incorporate it.
Because like even on my website, what I do is I'll put their picture up, and then if they click on their picture, it goes straight to their home page.
Yeah,
that's great.
That's really cool. I did that. Yeah, I thought.
Because that's a great idea. What you guys were talking about is letting people know where you are in the local community. Writing a book is the easy part. After it's published, it's time to put on a different hat. You are now the marketer. Marketing your book is the most time-consuming and possibly the most difficult part of the book process. Finding your audience, creating a platform, and utilizing all web-based utilities can be daunting. Social media is a must in today's market. And boy, we're going to talk to you about this, Becky. In 2015, more than 338,000 books were published in the United States alone. That's over 900 books a day. Today, that figure is more than 1,000 books a day. Ebook publishing is substantially more. Prior to this show, according to the worldmeters.info, more than 2,450,000 books have been published across the world this year. You may need help in several areas beyond cover design, editing, and typesetting. Book signings are great, but if you are self-published, it can be a difficult feat to get your books in the store, including feet. Plus, traveling and doing book signings can be expensive and not feasible for everyone. Becoming known as a local author might be your greatest asset. There are so many avenues you can take to get your book out there in the local market, and that is what we're here to talk about today. And we're going to talk about all the different aspects. And Becky, I'm not sure what you're doing for authors in Toledo or anywhere else, but I know you're involved. You have another company. You're not just Hometown Reads. How else can you help the authors?
Well, that's a great question, James. So it really depends upon what the author's budget is, whether they have the money to hire a marketing team or whether they want to do marketing work themselves. So my team and I recently launched and are actually preparing for a January launch of what we call the Book Marketing Action Guide. So for any authors who are really looking for a bit more guidance in terms of how do I craft a book marketing strategy? What do I do first? What do I do second? What's important for social media? We walk authors through step by step how to market their books or do it themselves. And that's available on a different website that wasn't included in our earlier comments called weavinginfluencelab.com. And so our team has basically two ways that we can engage with authors. One is those authors who want to do marketing themselves, and they can learn step by step all the various components of how to market their book through our course. Or for those authors who have a budget around marketing, we help authors with everything from building an author website to learning how to use social media in a strategic way. We do PR outreach on behalf of authors. We work with authors in scheduling online events to get the word out about their books. So really anything that you can think of as it relates to marketing a book online, my team and I partner with authors to do. And I think that for every author, really, how they're going to market their book is unique to the topic of their book, their energy, time, and budget for marketing, and what they hope to accomplish. So I think starting by really identifying the most important goals for your book marketing campaign is the most important aspect.
And also, Becky, if you'll send me, when that site is up, if you'll send me one of your logos that I can put on my website, I will gladly put that on there for you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, we've been working, we created the course and, first got it out there earlier this year. And then we realized that we were failing to follow our own advice about marketing. We always tell our authors they need to launch their books. Well, we needed to launch our course, which we really never did. So we're preparing to launch it in January, and I'll be happy to share that with you then, James.
All right. Well, we're going to talk about where can you go to do book signings. And on a local level, and you both know this very well, both Linda and Vicki-Ann. So, Vicki-Ann, you created something I'd like you to share as far as what you've put together with the coffee houses.
So, going back to what you were saying, Becky, about, how you can utilize what is in your local area to further your marketing. I was thinking, because we do Barnes & Noble, we do local bookstores. What else can we do as authors to get our name out there? And what goes well with books? Coffee, right? Mm-hmm. So I started thinking, well, what about all the coffee houses in town? You have the chains, but you also have the smaller ones.
Right.
And Linda and I had started it, and we met, and we clicked. And so we're kind of like the dynamic duo now in town with the coffee house tours. And basically we go seasonal. So we'll go out in January and we'll start lining up for our second half of the like winter, spring. And we go to the various places in town. We're going to add some new ones, and we talk to them about doing a signing. We usually do about anywhere between 2 and 4 authors at a time, and we have several authors that are part of our rotation.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And I design posters, and we usually drop them off about a week or 2 prior. But,
and as many as they need, whether they have 3 windows or 5 windows and they want to put them in there.
Right.
Vicky is our artist, so she takes care of that.
We're in sad shape, but maybe.
No.
So we design the posters, and then we drop them off and they put them in the window, and then we use social media to advertise. It's been pretty good because it's brought us from the coffee houses to Walmart.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's
so
great.
that was kind of exciting.
Yeah.
When we went in with those posters showing her what we had done with the coffee houses, that
She
got
was
her
impressed.
excited, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
And we got booked at Walmart. But it's been a lot of fun because so many people don't realize that we're out there. You do Barnes & Noble, but they're going in for specific books. What about all the people who don't go into Barnes & Noble for books? What if they read, but they may buy online all the time? So they don't see us. They don't know that we're there. And it seems to be catching fire, I guess.
Well, we had a gentleman on the show, John Diamora, and with his books, what he started doing was an evening with John Diamora at the Italian restaurants. And,
that.
he's very successful at that. I mean, he'll sell 40, 50 copies at one sitting.
that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's very
so
cool.
You have to be creative. We had another author on years ago who was he didn't want to. He used a pseudonym. He wouldn't even show his face because he is a well-known television personality. So what he did, he wrote a book that was basically like 50 Shades of Grey, but it was from a man's perspective.
Wow.
And so what he did is he actually would market it on the dating sites.
Are you
Oh
kidding?
my gosh,
Really?
kidding.
really?
Wow.
Yeah, and I was really surprised to hear that he was able, capturing an audience that way, but he did. So I think you have to be very imaginative and don't be afraid to try anything.
No. And we call ours coffee and conversation.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So
And that works because, so there are some days that we have more conversation and coffee than we do selling books.
Sure.
So we know both sides of it. Some days our audience will just be constant. I mean, there'll be people at our table just we usually go about 3 hours. That it depends too on the location. That is a big thing for us. We kind of know how to gauge the location and about how many people will be coming in.
So Becky, in Toledo, do they have a lot of book fairs? Because they do that periodically throughout the year here in Las
Right,
Vegas.
They do.
I mean, we have a little bit better temperatures than they do in Toledo, but, I'm sure they have events there as well. Becky, are you there?
Oh, I'm here. I'm sorry. I think that I've seen a lot of success from authors who join forces. Like the more authors that you have, the more potential in terms of bringing guests in. So we had some Hometown Reads authors who did an event in Chicago, and I think there were 10 or 12 different authors that were all at a bookstore in one day. And as each of them reached out to their audiences, potentially the number of people who could come out to the event increased.
Yeah.
But I feel for the two of you because I heard you say, Linda, more conversation than book sales.
Sometimes.
Selling books is hard.
it is. It really is.
It is.
Yeah.
We one of the things that we try to make sure we do when we do the coffee house tour is that Vicki and I have a different genre with what we write. And so we try to bring in the third or fourth person, depending again on the venue, and try to have, again, something different so that when people come through there, everybody isn't writing romance or everybody's not writing mystery. And so I think that kind of increases the audience too, because they know in advance, these are the authors that will be here and this is what they write.
Yeah, the
So
more
that
eclectic,
helps.
the more
Yes.
eclectic, the more
Exactly.
response we get.
Yeah.
Well, and also you're not overwhelmed with one genre, because I went
Yes.
to the writers' romance group here a couple of years ago, and you have like 40 or 50 authors in one venue who all wrote
Right,
romance.
Yes.
So if you come in the front and you're going down each line of tables, after a while, do you get tired of, you have to question, because you've been to those as well, I think.
Yes,
have,
yes,
yeah.
yes.
And I hear some authors who would say I didn't sell anything, or I only sold 1 or 2 books, and it's just really hard to capture an audience when everyone's doing the exact same thing, or at
is.
least that's what I find.
No, I agree. I agree.
All right, and I want to talk about how can you find your audience. And Becky, I know you have to have input on this one.
Sure. Well, I think first you have to know who your audience is. So it's
Yes.
really helpful to identify, who are the types of people who might read the books that I'm writing. What other authors' books might they be reading? What type of websites might they go on? So in our core business, we primarily work with business book authors. So in helping them utilize social media effectively, what we might do is, concentrate on LinkedIn, where business audiences are. And so for the two of you, romance writers, maybe that audience is on Pinterest. And how can you use Pinterest in such a way that you can draw those people who would be interested in your
Right.
books? Now, I'm not sure on the paranormal side, exactly what the persona is of the type of person who might choose your book. But you mentioned young adults. So Instagram, for example, might be a
Yes.
great channel
I
to
do.
find those young adult readers. And so, obviously, James, yes, it's important to find your audience, but first you have to know them.
Yes.
And the more you can get to know about, what the people are like who have enjoyed your books, the more likely you will be to find others. And, one surefire way to find others is find a fan. If there's a fan of your work, chances are they have friends who could be fans of your work as well.
Yeah.
And if you can capture one person's attention, and if that person's willing to share your books with others, that's a really great way to reach more readers. I don't know how often you all use Facebook in terms of getting the word out about your
Oh,
book,
yeah.
All the time.
but
All the
quite
time.
often my friends on Facebook will say, "Hey, who has a good book to recommend?" And that's the perfect moment where you want someone to have read and remembered your books so
Yeah.
that they can share that with others. So know your audience.
Yeah, and today, we talked about on the last show that's actually you can listen to on the website with Jamie Deese, we were talking about how you find an audience as well. And she was talking about how she has one book that's she considers it paranormal romance. So if you can go out there and find both audiences, the better for you.
Right.
And it used to be taboo to try and market to more than one genre, whether it be paranormal or romance. But nowadays it's very acceptable because it really is a paranormal romance. It's vampires and
That's what mine primarily are. Is
Right.
romance. Yeah.
Right.
So.
Okay, ladies, maybe you can answer this question for me. This is something I found so strange at one of my first author events. There was a number of authors there who would write under 2 different names. So you write one genre under one name, and then you have a pseudonym for your other genre. But they would have a table at the book fair, and they'd have both names, one table, and it's the one person. So why create a different name and persona and then still be the one out there representing both?
You know what, Becky? I saw that too. I saw that at one of the festivals where it
Yeah.
was one author with 2 different. And I had that dilemma not too long ago. I wrote a book that's very far removed from anything I write. I haven't even submitted it yet, my manuscript. But I went to the chief editor at my publisher, and I said, I have a dilemma. I don't know what to do. I'm thinking of writing under a pen name for this book.
right.
And this is what she said to me. She said, you're finally starting to really, get your name out there. People are starting to recognize and know who you are. Why would you want to start all over again under another name? Just because it's different genre than what you normally write, they know what kind of writer you are. That alone may make them pick up the book, even if it's different than what you usually do. And so I chose not to, go ahead and use a pen name. And so that was another dilemma, like you said, because she said to me, what about you go for a signing and they're expecting, I don't know, Joe Schmo, and there you are. And then, oh, oh, Vicki-Ann Bush, you do these other books, you know? So it's kind of funky.
Well, I have an author that I represent, and she writes under the name H Montgomery, and she writes historical fiction.
Yes, she does.
Yes,
And,
she does.
Yeah, and you know, but she recently started writing children's stories with someone else. They collaborated on a series of children's books, and she used the name Sue Montgomery. So she called me and asked me, you know, I feel like now I should never have used S.H. Montgomery, and I said, why? Because it's a different genre, and you can market yourself differently. You're not going to go to the book signing to read a children's book when you have your historical fiction, which you're going to do separately. So you can still be one writer and have 2 different names or 3 different names, as long as you're approaching the audience that fits that genre. I
get
know
what you're saying,
Yeah,
but then you see these people, like Becky was
Right.
saying, that they're sitting at the table, and you see these books here, this book here, 2 separate, completely different names, and one person in the center. It's like,
Well,
huh?
I can tell you it worked for Nora Roberts. Right. She started out as J.D. Robb, writing her kind of mysteries and the murder mysteries and all of that, and became Nora Roberts when she started writing her romance and her. Now, some of that has kind of combined a little bit because she now writes those wonderful romance books with a lot of mystery and some, you know,
Well, Morgan,
things, but it's worked
It
wonderfully
works.
for her.
Morgan St. James was on the show, and I know you know Morgan St. James. She writes in several different genres. She still markets. She just did. She's with her sister. They write the Silver Sisters Mysteries, and they did Corpse in the Soup. But then she also collaborated with someone on Incest, Murder, and a Miracle. And so the thing is that it's okay to have more than one book out there if your audience knows who you are. And I don't see anything wrong, really. I don't think you should be presenting the children's book necessarily if you write paranormal romance.
That's what I'm saying. That's basically
But if
what
you
I'm
have
saying.
other books, though, that might be a mystery or a drama, I don't see anything wrong with that. I don't know. How do you feel, Becky, about that?
Well, I don't necessarily have a strong opinion. I definitely think, as Linda was saying, that it can work for some authors. I know as a reader, I might like to know if the person whose work I love wrote something slightly different.
And that's basically what they were saying. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
what they were saying to me.
Well, you know, Lois Lamar, who sold over 300 million books, has always been known for his westerns. He's wrote over 105 books in the western genre. But he also wrote science fiction and paranormal, and
We were talking
wrote
about
science
that,
and paranormal,
yeah.
and then other books as well. He didn't just stick to the one genre, but he was only known for his westerns. But he still had a market out there. It just wasn't the same type audience he had for westerns. Yeah, I think there's nothing wrong with that. I think if you have books to bring, I'm saying that, of course, because I write science fiction, drama, and children's stories. But I would never market my children's books alongside my science fiction.
Right.
or drama.
And that's what I was talking about. That's very odd, I think, to see that combination on a table.
Right.
You know, with the 2 different.
But you never know. When I go to the book festivals, you know who 1330 Publishing is. And they represent several authors, and they have that because all their authors write in different genres. But maybe it's because they're one publishing company. But you still can go there and you can see every...
Well, let me tell you, Barnes & Noble once did this to me. I started off, as you know, in children's books, okay?
Right.
So I had The Queen of It, but I also had The Dust Chronicles out. The Dust Chronicles is a paranormal romance, Becky. So I went in for a signing for The Dust Chronicles, and they put The Queen of It out at the same table as The Dust Chronicles.
Okay.
So it was confusing when people came up because it's like, oh, is this a paranormal? No, this is a children's book.
But that was you as the author. Yeah, and I probably agree with you on that. I don't think I would try and market them together.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I'm saying if you're going to do that, I think that you should market separately. If you're going to do that with a different name, then I think when you have a signing, you should be presenting under that.
Well, Morgan, when she would write under her pseudonym
Yeah.
with the one author, she actually would get a wig and glasses.
Oh my goodness.
And she went out there as a different persona, for real.
There you go, and have
Yeah,
fun
yeah.
with it.
I was
Yeah.
gonna say,
And she
Yeah.
did, yeah.
Might be
Yeah.
fun.
Well, you know, Garth Brooks did that
Yes.
with his music.
Yes.
So when he wanted to do pulp, so you just have to, like we were talking about, you have to know your audience and you appeal to your audience. All right, what can we do to create a platform? There is a difference between saying I write romance or I write science fiction or I write children's stories when it comes to creating a platform. And I know, Becky, you know about this because I did research your website. So can you explain what creating a platform is about?
Well, sure, I'd be happy to. And I was actually thinking about that during this conversation because building a platform really is about growing a base of connections and fans. And my strongly held opinion is that every person needs a home online that's the center of whatever strategy they're creating around their brand. And so I was thinking about this with the different genres or, different names. Those authors likely need separate web presences for those separate things that they're doing in the world. And so at the center of everything is your own home online. And so, just during this show even, I went and looked at Linda's website, Vicki-Ann. I need to look at yours as well. But that's the one place that you own and control. It's the place where when people are looking for you on the internet that they're going to find you. Hopefully when they get there, they'll be able to very quickly see who you are, what you do, and what value you're going to bring to them through your work. So once you have a website, from there, what you want to do is have a growing number of people who know about you and who look to you and, become your fans and followers. So typically this next priority once you have a website is to grow an email marketing list. And James, you and I talked about this before the show. In my mind, it's way more important to build an email list where you can stay in contact with the people who are interested in your work than it is to have a lot of followers on social media platforms. Because what happens is, like, take Facebook, for example. If you're growing a fan page on Facebook, you probably know by now that in order to grow that fan base on Facebook, you often have to pay through advertising to get more likes.
Right.
So the first thing that you do is you pay through advertising to have more likes. And then once you've paid for those likes, when you publish content, you very quickly see that Facebook has these algorithms and they're only showing a very small fraction of your fans your content.
Right.
So first you pay to get the fans, then you pay to have your fans see your work through sponsored posts. And then, who knows if Facebook changes things, you don't have any direct way to stay in contact with your fan base. So that's why it's so important to move people from whatever the social media channel is over to your website, where hopefully you can give them a reason to sign up to hear from you. And then over time, you can communicate with them either through, intermittent emails or through a regular newsletter. And so you can say, hey, this is the book I'm working on next, and here's when it's coming. And, here's some things I'm thinking about, or here's a storyline I'm playing with, or, what opinion do you have about, should I set my next book in Peoria or Toledo, or, would you rather see a romance that's, at a ski resort or a beach town, or, whatever those things are that you can ask your readers about. The best way to do that is really through email marketing. So the idea of a platform is a recognizable place to stand in the world where people can see you and connect with you. And for each of us, the most important thing is to have that be growing week after week and month after month and year after year. And, as the two of you were talking about coffee and conversation, ideally when you meet people face to face, you'll find a way to get them to sign up for your email list as well. Because, as well as I do, you might meet an author one time and you could easily forget them. But if you stay connected and you hear from them, you're not going to be able to forget them. So part of having a platform is becoming memorable. So people are waiting to see what that next book is that you're going to bring into the world.
We had Pat Ritter on the show a couple shows back, and Pat Ritter is an author from Australia. And what he's done, and I thought this was really cool what he's done, he uses the email. I actually get emails from him every single day. He writes a chapter and presents it every morning at 7 o'clock in the morning, his time. It goes out to all his fan base. He actually says when he goes in town to the store or whatever, they'll say, what's going on today? And they go, well, what did you read? Oh, no, I haven't had a chance to sit in front of the computer yet. But people want that. So by enticing them with one chapter a day, he's went from having 2 people originally on his fan base to over 9,000. And those 9,000 aren't just in Australia. So, it's he really was smart in utilizing that email to where you get that, and you're expecting that in your email every day. Let me see what Pat wrote today. And it's a great way also of introducing them to your book because they're only getting a chapter at a time. And when you finish the book, they want to buy the book because now they're interested in reading it in its entirety.
Well, and I'm sure there's a lot of people that after maybe the first 5 or 6 chapters, they don't want to wait more days to hear the rest of it, and they're going to go out and buy it before the chapters have even finished.
Well, he does this before publishing it.
Oh, he does?
Yes.
Okay.
And that helps him in many ways because it also gives him feedback. So if something didn't read well, he can go back and rework it. If there was an error, he gets to go back and make that correction. It really is. It's a great platform for him. It works. And he is a best-selling author in Australia. And he started out many years ago. But anyway, the thing is he does this now from home. He does all this from home. He's in the country, no one around him for miles. And he just sits there and he has the best time because he's got 9,000 people to...
That's the dream life.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So,
I just started a newsletter, so I got a whole 65 people.
well, I know for sure that what Becky does is that her company deals with emails as well. Is that not correct?
We do. We help a lot of our authors with email marketing, and it's phenomenal to me how effective that is. There's a best-selling business book author named John Gordon. He's not a client of mine, but I remember engaging with the person who helps him with marketing, and I couldn't figure out. It was John had a new book coming out, and it was at the top of the bestseller list on Amazon, and it seemed to be doing really well. But I went on John's social media. He wasn't posting about it. He didn't even have any images of the new book, on his Twitter account. And I was kind of flummoxed by that because whenever we work with authors, that's a core focus is to make sure the new book is really visible. So I emailed this marketer and I said to him, what's the story? How's John selling so many books? And, I'm not really even seeing a major social media push. What I heard was, well, John has an email marketing list. At the time, it was over 100,000 people.
Oh,
so all he needs to do when he has
That's impressive.
when he has a new book out is to email that list of 100,000 people. And if only a small fraction buy the book, he's got another bestseller.
Wow. How do you
So
get
any
100,000 people?
I think being out there for a long time and very consistently working to convert the people. He's a speaker. So if he's in, doing event after event after event, then he must have a really effective means of getting those people who see him speak to translate into his email list. And John, if you ever hear this show, which I doubt you will, great admiration.
Don't say that, Becky.
I hope it's okay that I'm using you as an example.
And we're proud of him.
Well, what's interesting is that all my PR people come through my email, by the way, and they all found me through someone else who sends them a list of emails, like for radio shows or television interview shows. So it's effective because I use those emails all the time. Thank goodness they send me different authors. I can't remember, Becky, how did I find you through Hometown Reads? I think someone referred me to you.
I think you might have gotten a press release that we sent out, James. So we use a media database to send out press releases, and I think you might have been on that list.
Yeah, so you see, it's effective. The emails really are.
Right.
And I look for those, by the way. I look for something from, like PR. I definitely look for those because I want to see what kind of authors they're sending me. I had a lady on, Rihanna Milne, and speaking of events, Rihanna Milne, I actually met at an event. This is kind of fun. I was going to do a stay vacation here in Las Vegas, and someone contacted me online through a PR person about an author, and I wrote her and said, I'd like to have you on the show to interview you. And she said, okay, great. And she was going to be in Vegas the week before we were supposed to do the interview. Well, because of the way I pre-record, I was able to say, what if I come to you? What hotel are you staying at?
Oh, goodness.
She happened to be staying at the exact same hotel where I was going to do a stay vacation the exact same weekend. Yeah. So then I contacted the hotel and said, well, what if I could set it up in the room because it was a 2-story suite. It was really nice. And so then she said, well, okay, that'll work. And then I thought, well, let me contact the hotel and see if I can get a boardroom. So I was able to get a boardroom. They actually accommodated me with one. From there, I got 3 interviews. And what's interesting, what I'm leading up to is these people who did these events that I found out, every one of them had a huge following of like 100,000 people on their lists, like you're talking about. And it's because they were doing these events. And when they do these events, the people who pay to come to these events, they want to stay in contact with you. They want to see where you are next and what you're doing next. So doing speaking events is a great way, like Becky was saying, to really build that list.
Yeah.
Anything you'd like to add to that?
No, I mean, I would encourage any author who might be listening, you want to have a place on your website where people can opt in to hear from you. Ideally, you might also have something free that you're giving away to them, a download of some sort. So when we were talking about my 31 Days of Twitter Tips ebook earlier, if you go to my website, weavinginfluence.com, and you click on Learn, we have a sub-nav called ebooks. And I have 4 or 5 free ebooks that I've written about marketing that people can download. Well, on one hand, I want to provide value to them. But on the other hand, once they download my ebook, I have their email address, and implicitly I have their permission to email to them. So authors who might be just getting started with a newsletter list, think about, is there a mini book or some type of tip sheet or a download that you can create that will appeal to your audience so that they can download it and become a part of your community. And if you haven't already done that, it's a really simple way to incentivize folks to give you their email address. Another way that... Yeah, sorry.
No, go ahead. I was going to say that's how I got it started, with a free short is what I did.
A short book.
Yeah.
Another thing would be if you want to do an event. So one of the things our team does is we do webinars. And when people sign up for our webinars, they give us their email address, and we've been able to build a list that way as well.
Oh, that's good.
So, think about, in what way can you draw people together, provide something that would be interesting to them. Most readers would really love the chance to talk face-to-face with you as an author. So potentially, inviting people through your social media channels to come to some type of virtual event, and then signing up for the virtual event, they'll be giving you their email address.
That is such a good idea.
John David Mann is a best-selling author. He was on our show. He sold over 2 million copies of his work. And the way he did that is what Becky had just mentioned. He does webinars. So he goes online and he talks to his fans. And as many people as want can join in on that conversation. Well, when you can say you've sold 2 million copies, that's pretty darn good. Yeah. So it obviously does work. One of the things when it comes to an event also is, I don't know if you consider this an event or not. Well, one of the things I found that helps a new author just starting out, and I don't know, Becky, if you even go into this at all, I didn't see anything on your site about it, is developing. I used to do book launchings with people. In fact, that's how Sue Montgomery got started, or H Montgomery. We actually went on Kickstarter, and we did a Kickstarter fundraising. And the thing is that a lot of people are intimidated by this. They think, oh gosh, I feel like I'm begging from my friends and family to donate to my getting this book off the ground. Well, these people can afford to do this. But what happens is if you go out there and you do a fundraiser and you go to family and friends, for instance, and then they tell their family and friends, what that can do is it will sell your books in advance. So it does help pay for your costs. But more importantly, it's advertisement. And I don't look at it as a fundraiser. I look at it as advertisement. Because now your friends and family that are local are going to want to come to the event. Because I always do book launching events for my books and other people's books as well. And we always have a huge crowd that show up because we do a cocktail party. All that's in your fundraiser. You got the money through the fundraiser to pay for the cocktail party. They find that once they do it, it's not as embarrassing as you think. Because these people were going to buy your book anyway. And you're not charging them probably what it would cost if they went and bought it retail. So you've created sales. You've created an audience. And people you don't know are buying the book. They may not come to the event, but they might buy the book because of being friends with someone else. That's one way. I always advise a new author, not necessarily someone who's already established, although I'm going to be doing it. But the thing is it's a great way if you're unknown to go out there and actually get the word out about what you're doing. And even if you don't do a fundraiser, in my opinion, you should still be doing a book launching. And we go to restaurants. I had used one restaurant in particular. It's always fun. And I find that and I do it in a hotel, so you have the out-of-town crowd there as well. And what happens is people are walking by and you've got your posters up saying the event today. I go to a gourmet restaurant. They open early just for this event, and it's only for the event. They do it 2 hours before the restaurant opens. And I find people walk by and I stand out front and they'll say, "What's going on in there?" And I go, "Oh, it's a book launching party. You want to meet the author?" "Well, yeah, can I?" "Sure, go on in." And what happens is that they end up buying books. So it's really something to think about. And that's one way to start your platform, because kind of like what Becky said, when they buy the book, we always have them give us their information. So now you have a fan base that you've started. You know, you have an input there that you can put into your email or whatever and start that fan base. Anything to add to that? Because I don't think you haven't mentioned that, Becky, and some of the stuff I was researching on you.
Sure. Well, we definitely work with authors around launch, and I think it is important to have an event, if you can, to commemorate just the experience of bringing your book into the world.
Right.
It's such a memorable time.
Yes. Yeah.
So,
no, go ahead.
yeah, I was just going to say, we work with most authors. We're not physically present with them. Our clients are all across the country.
Yeah.
And so as often as I can, I encourage those authors to plan events, but it's not always feasible. So that's why it's interesting to get creative and figure out how you can also use virtual events in a way to celebrate the launch of your book.
Becky, do you use YouTube at all?
Well, certainly. I think video is a fantastic platform for authors. I have some videos on YouTube, not probably as many as I should. Many of our authors use YouTube as well. So video is an awesome way to connect with folks and help them see, who you are and what you're passionate about.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
It's also one of the biggest search engines there is. So when we work with authors who are interested in being paid as speakers, I always encourage those authors who want to get hired to speak to have an extensive library of videos available on YouTube, and also what you call a speaker reel, where you put together the best parts of, hopefully sometimes that you've been in front of an audience. Because most event organizers, when they're looking for a speaker, they go to YouTube first. They search there.
Wow. I just started doing that with YouTube. It was like my publisher had kind of sent out a thing to everyone and said, it might be a really good idea if you want to start that. So I did, but I didn't know how popular it was.
YouTube is exceedingly popular.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. I do YouTube, and what they do is the company that I go through then takes my feed, puts it on their feed, which I'm glad for. I prefer that. I mean, I don't get credit for it on YouTube, but the point is that I'm now on their platform, and they have a huge platform.
I've watched your show on YouTube.
Yeah.
So is my brother. Remember I told you?
Yeah.
He plugs in.
But we're also on Roku TV, and we're a couple other outlets as well. And it really is a great way of getting people to know what you do. That's why we do the video. We don't just do the audio, because you do have a different audience. For instance, when we do the audio, we have a greater reach because we have 14 terrestrial stations, and then we have, the AM, FM 24/7. So you have the web, the World Wide Web that you're going on as well. But when we do the video, if you can put it out there on different outlets, it's still amazing how many people, right now my audience on video is about 31,000. So that's pretty good, even for just a video audience. When it comes. But I don't do that marketing. I have to be honest with you. I leave that up to someone else, which is kind of what your company does, Becky. You do a little bit of that.
Indeed, we do.
And that's kind of what...
Once or twice,
just a few times. Huh?
Yeah, I was just teasing.
Well, anyway, the main thing is that we wanted to get across here is local authors and how you can get to know those local authors. And hopefully, as your company progresses with Hometown Reads, the word will get out there about your site. Because I really think it's really neat. Because I know if I'm traveling, I might be curious to go to an event maybe that an author from, if I'm in Chicago and I have to be there for something else, I might want to see who's there and what they're doing.
Sure.
So it's really, and plus you want to see what other people are doing to get the word out about their books. So that's one way to find out as well.
Every time we go to one of the bigger events, they have an AuthorPalooza in the spring up in Mesquite.
Uh-huh.
And I just went for the first time this last April. But you learn so much from everybody that you talk to.
Yeah.
And those may be the same people that, like the group of authors that we have that, we kind of work together. But seeing them in that different venue, you learn so much more than just, having dinner or whatever.
Right.
So I do believe that the events and especially if you don't know a lot of the people, you're learning every time you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything you'd like to add to that, Becky?
No, I just think that one of my core desires for Hometown Reads is that as we establish the website, and that the authors represented on the website would actually leave online and meet together in person and share best practices and ideas with one another.
Yeah.
I think there's so much potential for when we join forces with others, we can all reach more readers together. So it's my deep hope that those authors who are represented on Hometown Reads will take that next step and actually have local gatherings and help each other in terms of understanding the best ways to get their books into the world.
Well, that's the one thing I have to say I'm very thankful for this show, is that I utilize a lot of local authors. What's interesting is that you're always meeting new people. Like you met someone today who was here for a different show.
Right.
So it's really great to find anything that's local that you can be a part of, whether it be a radio show or an event or whatever, so you can network and get to know each other, because it's from that ideas grow. And that's why what you're doing is really great, Becky, in that you can unite those people in a way they might not have been able to otherwise. I have to tell you something real quick, and then we're down to the last minute of the show. I actually had someone, I always go and get funny quotes we try to do in the beginning of the show, and I looked at this funny quote. I really liked it. I put it in, and I gave it to one of the authors who was going to be on the show. He gets to the studio. We're sitting and we're talking about it, and he goes, "Oh, I know that person." I'm thinking this person somewhere else in the world. Meanwhile, prior to coming to the studio, I had written that author, and I said, "Would you like to be on my show?" So I tried to find out what, I sent an email out asking him, what time zone he's in. He hadn't gotten back with me yet. And this guy sitting here, he said, "Oh, I know him personally." And I said, "How do you know him personally?" "He lives here."
Oh my goodness.
Surprise.
Not only does he live here, he's within 5 minutes walking distance from this studio.
Oh my God.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and he actually is a best-selling author. So it's amazing in your own hometown who is there that we don't even know about. So that's why this Hometown Reads is really going to be a great tool. Well, we're down to the last minute of the show, and I would like to thank our guests. And Linda, where else can we learn about your books?
Well, the book that we're showcasing today is Forever Again, and the next book in this actual trilogy is Forever Begins, and I'm working frantically to try to get it finished. And if you just follow my website or my Facebook author page, you can find out when it's going to be there.
Okay, and Vicki-Ann?
You can find me on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, my webpage, Facebook, Twitter.
All the social medias. We're there.
Becky. Becky, where can we learn more about you?
Sure. So there are lots of places on the web to find me, but today we want to make sure that you'll visit hometownreads.com. My core company is at weavinginfluence.com. If you want to learn more about me personally and my journey as an entrepreneur, you can go to beckyrobinson.com. Our course lives at weavinginfluencelab.com. That's probably enough web addresses for now.
All right. Well, I'd like to thank my guests, Vicki-Ann Bush, Linda Stiles-Fox, and Becky Robinson. You can find the video of our past shows on youtube.com/aspects of writing. You can also go to the website aspectsofwriting.com, and all of our links are there. We are syndicated on iHeartRadio, iTunes, Roku TV, AMFM247.com, and many more. In addition, we archive our shows, all of our shows on Aspects of Writing, so just go to the website at aspectsofwriting.com. Until next week, this is your host, James Kelly, reminding you, if you can dream it, you can write it. Thank you, everyone, for being on the show.